folks, welcome to Bear Mountain. It's sweet potato time here on the farm, so join us as we start planting these guys out. Today is going to be our day. We're planting our sweet potatoes and our yams for this season in the kitchen garden. And this year we've got three varieties. We have our mystery variety that we started from last year's sweet potatoes, which we believe is probably Jadam. And then we've got a couple of new ones. One's a yam called Mahon, M-A-H-O-N. Not sure how to pronounce it, probably butchering it. And then we've got a Georgia Jet, which is they call it a sweet potato, but it kind of looks like a yam. And all three of these guys are kind of just a little bit different. The Jadam is kind of a creamy yellow flesh and tends to be ready about the end of October for us. We haven't raised Mahon before, and so we're kind of seeing how that one comes out. And the Georgia Jet we've done before, and Georgia Jet is kind of a reliable, but it doesn't make a really long tuber for us. It tends to make a more stocky one, and it's been a pretty good producer for us here in the Pacific Northwest. So we're trying three different ways of planting. This one, we started these slips about 5 days ago, and you can see all the roots on these guys. Instead of potting these guys up, we're going to plant these guys directly in the ground to see if we can just eliminate that step of growing them on. And then we have some that we did pot up, and then all the Mahon yams are not potted up. So we're going to see how well this works by just sticking these guys in the ground. Be a lot faster doing it this way than having to dig a nice big hole for a pot. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of an experiment in addition to also whether we should plant directly from slips into the ground versus potted up. We're also kind of doing a test between two beds. We've got a bed over here to my right, which is what we had sweet potatoes in last year. And this year we're following kind of a it's got a deep mulch on it. And it's also we're using Jadam fertilizer on the bed as well as the JMS. And we're going to see how well the sweet potatoes do over here, as well as on my left side, we have a different bed. And this bed we're doing strictly just regular soil with a very light dusting of compost, not a deep mulch thing, and biochar. So we've got two different versions of soil, kind of a soil management plan. We're not going to fertilize these guys with the Jadam, and we're just going to fertilize these guys with maybe a little fish fertilizer. Once they get started, we're just going to kind of leave them alone. When we plant under the Jadam thing, we're going to fertilize with those guys until they're roughly running, spreading well and looking very healthy. And then from that point on, we'll leave them alone. We're going to hook up drip irrigation to both beds. So after we plant, this will just be a 1/4 inch micro line basically wrapped around the bed, around the plants, so that they'll have, instead of overhead watering to them, they'll be watered at pretty much the base of the plants. Spacing for us, we actually packed them in pretty tight. Last year we had 30 plants in this bed, and that produced pretty well. This bed over here is a little smaller, so I'm probably going to be around 20 in this one. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get a mix. So I want to have a third of the bed in Georgia Jet or thereabouts, and a third in the Mahon yam, and the rest of it on our Jadam, so that we kind of have an equal outcome possibility of seeing how the production for each variety does under the different circumstances.
Will they all be able to go in here?
We're probably going to have extra, because particularly in the Jadam, we just did lots and lots of slips. So if we have extra, what we're going to do is we're going to be harvesting the potatoes in the compost pile. And so we're going to say, hey, how about a rotation of sweet potatoes after the early potatoes are done? And so we'll see how that goes. And that actually might work out pretty well, because the compost is pretty well getting itself broken down. And these guys would probably do a great job in covering the pile real fast. And so we'll put the extra down there and see what we get out of that. Now, you know what's going to happen, folks, don't you? We go through all this painstaking effort to do these different things, and the one we just threw in the compost pile will give us the biggest potatoes.
Of course.
Of course. Anyway, so let's get it started. We're going to lay them out and get them in, and then we'll water them in real good, and that's about it. So some of you folks may have wondered, I was like, what's this dill plant doing in the middle of where he's going to put his sweet potatoes? Well, it's going to be finished up here pretty quick, but it's a volunteer, and we find that when we let certain things like this just kind of grow where they are, it kind of just, they do well. So every time we try to plant dill,
we don't do well.
We don't do as well as this. So yeah, this guy's going to be done here probably in a few weeks anyway. So we've already got seeds set, so it's going to be ready for pickle season.
It's only one.
Oh, we got another one right behind
there's
it.
two, but
There's
that's
two.
not enough for
It's enough
pickling.
for seasoning.
It's not for pickling.
Okay, these are the slips of the yam mayan or mahan, and when we got them, they really didn't have any leaves on them, or they were like, you know, crispy crittered, kind of like this old one is here. And so what we did is we just kind of sprouted these guys on like we do starting our normal slips. And so this is about 5 days, no, probably 7 days after we got them. And so there's really good roots formed on these guys. So they're really pretty good to go. So we're going to put 10 of them in this bed over here, and then 10 over here, and then we're going to fill the rest of it in with our remaining rooted Bardamans. And so that'll kind of give us, I think, total probably somewhere around, close to 50 sweet potato plants.
Jeez,
up here.
Louise.
We're in the sweet potato business.
Are we?
Well, you know what? I like it this way: is if we put in enough, because some plants produce really well, other plants kind of. It's not a consistent thing for us. It seems like, you know, we have some plants that'll produce really skinny small tubers. They'll be great for sprouting for the next season, and you can cook with them a little bit, like in a stir fry or something like that. And then some plants will get, you know, the nice big tubers that are pretty good size. So it's kind of, we're playing the law of large numbers here. You know, will we really get 4,000 pounds of sweet potatoes in the Pacific Northwest? The answer is no. So we're trying to get, you know, a good production off of it, because it's like today is we're 60 degrees this morning, if we're that
60.
And so our night
62.
times tend to cool down and our daytimes tend to be hot. Well, a sweet potato does really well in its growing season if the nighttime temperatures, you know, go down to maybe 70. Our nighttime temperatures will go down to the low 60s and high 50s in the summertime. And then as we approach September, we actually even go lower at night. We can have real warm days, but our nighttime temps will be like in the mid 50s. So
this is tricky for us.
It's a tricky
grow.
thing without using black plastic.
And we don't want
kind of
to
don't want to do that. We're and part of it is we realized too that black plastic helps getting them started in a sense, but it doesn't really do anything once the vines start spreading and they cover it. It's like the effect of the plastic, I guess, is mostly just a weed barrier at that point. But we've never really had a weed problem either. Once the vines get really spread out and covered, it's harder and harder for a weed to survive, and the ones you do find you can easily get rid of pretty quickly. So let's just put these guys in. It's going to be simple. We'll use our hori knife and just stab and poke and put it in, and try to keep these guys about a foot apart and get it done. Okay, these are the Varieties slips that we started, and we just put them in a little bit of water with some K&F seed enhancing solution. As you can see, they really formed some nice roots, and they're even started to put some side shoots on here. So these guys are ready to rock and roll. So I'm thinking this is probably the way to go in the future, unless there's for some reason there's a prolonged period of time where we have to keep things potted up because of weather. But honestly, this is probably just so much faster.
They also made a really pretty house plant.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you could take an extra one and just pot it up and grow it inside as a house plant. Now, one of the things to note about sweet potatoes is the foliage is edible. So as an example, if you wanted to use this foliage in a salad or something like that, the newer leaves are pretty tender. So once these guys really start spreading and putting out runners all over the place, we come out lots of times and just clip off the some of the extra runners. Particularly, we're trying to kind of contain it from taking over everything, and we just use them in salads. Some people use them in stir fries, but they're totally edible. So yeah, some good stuff. Also, a note, you should have probably some form of deer protection, since they are edible and tasty. I'm sure they're quite a snack for a deer. Okay, one of the things about in the Jadam method that makes it a little different than what people are normally used to is there's no crop rotation. And that's kind of an idea that's starting to, many people are starting to kind of experiment with. And the whole idea behind the theory in that in Jadam is that nature doesn't rotate crops. Even if it's an annual grass, the seed tends to fall where the seed grew before. And what the point on the natural cycle is that the decomposed remains of the parent material that grew there before, the same plant, actually provides all the nutrients necessary for the next generation of plant. So we're kind of practicing the same idea. This bed had sweet potatoes on it. We're probably going to rotate, sweet potatoes out of this bed for a number of years, with the whole idea being that the extra vines and stuff that at the end of the season we'll just leave in here, like this is sweet potato vine from last year, and we'll just leave it in and cover it with a mulch and let it rot through the winter time. And then these things, whatever rotted out of these things, will become the nutrients for the next year's crop. That would also hold true for any potatoes that maybe were damaged or we just won't store. If there's not too many of them, we'll just kind of smash them up a bit and leave them on the bed and cover it again. So the whole idea is the nutrients from the previous crop provide kind of the basis for the next year. So some people say, well, that would maybe foster disease. If you had disease in it, that disease would be there again the next year. And that's something I guess we're going to experiment with, if that's truly the case, if we end up with something that causes a problem. But lots of times a plant is attacked by a fungus or disease or bugs is because that plant is out of balance. And the theory behind this is that if you grew good plants on this before and used that refuse again, it would become the nutrients available that the plant needs. So there's the theory behind it. Anyway, enough pontification, got to keep planting. One thing I have noticed is that the soil is quite friable on both beds, so that's a good thing. One of the things that we always do before we plant anything is we'll spend a good day beforehand really irrigating the bed really well. Besides giving our plants, a boost from like a compost tea inoculant, having the extra moisture in the bed slows down any kind of plant transplant shock. It's not going from like a moist environment to a dry environment. So, and also too, it gives a little bit of time for the microbiology to kind of get geared back up again. So if the bed was too dry, we tend to lose a lot more plants, particularly this time of year if we get a hot blast, which, wow, this one guy really wants to be stuck. And so what we try to do is minimize that by getting as much moisture in the ground ahead of time. And then we'll keep it, most things that we plant, fairly well irrigated for the at least first week in the ground so that the roots can get reestablished.
These are all on timer also.
Yes. We also, once the drip irrigation, it runs at the peak season when we're at our hot and dry, we'll run it twice a day for about 15 minutes. And then as the season kind of lengthens out, you start getting into September, or maybe there's more rain or something of that nature comes back, we back it off at that point. So our climate here in the Pacific, this part of the Pacific Northwest, is very Mediterranean in the summertime. We can have really hot days and dry. So we actually are in a drought this year, so it's a little bit abnormal. But normal for us is most of our rain is finished by middle of June or right to the 4th of July. And then we stay dry until, actually no rain usually at all until right around 1st of September or so. We might get a little bit of rain, and then it kind of comes in earnest starting pretty much in October. So we stay pretty dry during the summertime. So mulches are important, and drip irrigation for us is key. Okay, last step is we're gonna lay out the drip irrigation. And what I'm using, these are landscape staples. They sell them, you know, like when you buy that geotextile fabric. They're designed for poking through the fabric and pinning it down. But it also does a really good job of guiding, you know, drip lines and kind of keeping them in, you know, a organized pattern a little better. And what I'm doing on this odd shaped bed is I'm going to lay the drip line down in kind of a spiral form, and that the center of it will be the end of it. So I'll go on the outside, and then I'll come in and do the inside, and then inside again until I end pretty much right about the center. So the whole idea is that we go maybe not much more than a 1.5 foot apart or somewhere in there before, you know, we end up with you know, kind of like another drip line. So that way we get good coverage on the entire bed. Now this micro line, this is 1/4 inch tubing, and the emitters are a 1/2 gallon per hour. And so we can get a lot of water, you know, right to the plants, which really works out well. So I'm going to turn right here because I got an emitter right here for this guy. And then we'll go to the inside. May even have extra line. It's been a long time since I put drip on this bed. I actually, when I had sweet potatoes on it last year, I didn't have drip irrigation on it. I just hand watered it, which is something I don't need to do.
Especially if the drip thing is right there.
Yeah. Well, with the pandemic and everything, we had some trouble getting drip line replacement stuff. It took longer than anticipated, but that seems to be okay now at this point. Okay, so we got it all lined out, and that's basically all we're going to need to do in here, I think, other than like the fertilization we talked about. The drip is on a timer, so it'll be hit every twice a day. We're going to go into some pretty hot weather here in this next week or so, so this is actually going to be pretty good sweet potato growing weather, I think. And as long as we keep these guys damp during the transition phase of them getting established, I think we're going to be fine. This should be a really good bed. Now, what we did, just to wrap it up, is we planted in zones, okay? So starting over here on this side is, we have Georgia Jets, and then we had Vardamans that we potted on. So everything from this point forward back on the bed were all grown into pots, and everything from this side over were just rooted slips. And we did the same thing in the opposite bed over there on the biochar bed, so that we know Georgia Jet, Vardaman, Mahan, and the remaining part of his Vardaman that we did. Now, one of the things that is the Mahan is a specialty variety that was hybridizing isn't the right word, maybe, but it was bred by a gentleman who owns a plant patent on it. So it's real important. We're just going to enjoy it and eat it, and if it's good, we'll buy more of it next year, but we're not going to propagate it. Even though technically it would probably be easy to propagate, it's just the wrong thing to do. I really respect that. Somebody spent a lot of effort in their time, in their life, developing something. They should get just reward for what they worked towards. So that's an important thing. That's it. Sweet potato time in 4 months.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us on this. And we'll kind of just do some posts every once in a while and see how things are going. Anticipate in a month, it's going to be pretty much covered with vine. And we should be pretty good. I still got to do the drip on the other side. So got more work to do. So thanks for joining us today. And as always, stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.